employed by many people, governments and so on, to tell them about the future, to explain the future. And there are two ways of looking at that. You can use explaining the future, talking about things in the future, really as a method of understanding today. Because very, very few of us live 100% in the modern world. And so one way of living in the modern world is to talk about the future and then extrapolating backwards. I would posit that we're living through, right now, one of those great revolutionary moments. And this is being driven by certain technological rules of thumb. And if we don't understand those technological rules of thumb as people, like we have today in this room, as people who are influential, as people who are building the new future, if we don't understand the present as we're building the future, then we're going to get ourselves into trouble. I was doing some planning earlier this week working with the Ministry of Defense, and we were doing some gaming scenario stuff for the year 2045. Now, 2045 can basically be summed up by this. But we know, even if, assuming Moore's law is correct, then the computing power that you have in your pocket in 2045 will be 4.32 billion times as powerful as the computing power you have in your pocket today. And yet, businesses, military, government are having to plan, anybody who today might be considering having a child, is having to plan for a future where we will be surrounded by technology which we cannot imagine. And this is for the first time in human existence. This radically changes the way that we have to live. So we're starting to now see, because of this increase in computing power, not jobs being taken by robots, because craftsmanship is actually quite hard to replicate, but professionals being replaced by AIs, because flowcharts are really easy to replicate. Now, some of you were saying, well, we've seen that happen in my trade, and it's rubbish at the moment, so I'm fine. But the other issue that you have is that if you can see a technology today and it's not very good, it's going to destroy you in about a decade's time. And the information revolution, the internet revolution and so on, is really, in fact, the mobile device revolution. And the reason it's the mobile device revolution is because these have started to touch us at a very, very special place. Because we've been using these devices for such a long time, we have learnt certain mental habits which have changed the way that we are. In fact, these devices are so intimate that they have become, to all intents and purposes, a slightly slower version of your memory. It's a laggy part of your brain. We have to understand the playing field that we find ourselves on. We have to understand the fundamental forces that are driving society forward. These weird fundamental forces are the fact that every time you get a phone, it's out of date. Every time you buy a laptop, it's out of date. And for those of us who understand it, or who learn to understand it, it's our responsibility to then go out to other people, to go to our friends, to go to our colleagues, to go to our relatives, and specifically to go to our politicians and our elected officials and tell them about these changes to the way that we have to think